We are starting a new series called Masterclass. Masterclass. Man, I remember the days of college where I would wake up at 7 a.m. classes. I'd have Old Testament survey at 7 a.m. There's nothing like hearing a professor talk about the Old Testament at 7 a.m. as a college student to get your brain going. I took theology 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 at 7 a.m. I took racquetball at 7 a.m. Hello, nothing wakes you up faster than a racquetball speeding past your head at 7 a.m. That's true. Man, we're doing this series called Masterclass because we believe that Jesus was a master teacher. And he was a master teacher at an early age, right? We see how he was teaching in the temple at an early age, and people were just astonished by how much of a grasp he had on the word, on the scriptures. And of course, that makes sense now looking backwards, right? We say, oh, yeah, it makes sense. He's the Son of God. Of course he would be, really great at this. But once he was his full-time ministry kind of took off, Jesus was on a mission on earth to raise up disciples. He was modeling what our Great Commission would be. He was modeling what the will and the heart of God is. And in doing so, he made it a priority to develop the leadership skills of his disciples. And like any teacher, he gave tests. How many people like tests? No great test takers out there? So what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive into several leadership tests that Jesus gave in order to prepare his disciples for their purpose. And I believe it's applicable to us today. So we're going to start in Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1, verse 16. This is right at the beginning of the story here for Jesus' full-time ministry. He says this. It says, one day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon. Now, when you see Simon, think Peter, because that's his name, and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them and says, come follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people. And they left their nets at once and followed him. A little further up the shore, Jesus saw Zebedee's sons, James and John, in a boat repairing their nets, and he called them at once, and they also followed him, leaving their dad Zebedee in the boat with the hired men. First test we're going to look at is called the change test. The change test. We're going to be talking about the process of change and the power of change. Change, I'm not asking you to love change, because who loves change, right? If you ask that question, not a lot of hands will be raised up. But what we have to do is we have to embrace change. Now, let me tell you what I'm not talking about when it comes to change. Now, I was on a flight recently, this last week, and I was in the window seat. There was a mom of an infant right there in the middle seat. It was a late night flight, right? There's one of those things we're kind of going, man, I think she was anticipating the baby to be asleep during this flight. The baby was not asleep during this flight. We've all been there, right? Babies kind of cry. That's not the story. Here's where the story gets weird, is that she goes to change the baby's diaper in the seat next to me. Not get up and go to the bathroom. Literally, like, we're going to just do this right here. I'm like, oh, I guess we're doing it right here. So the baby's head is in my lap as she's changing the diaper. Right? And I'm sitting there going, I just kind of have to go. I guess we're doing this. It happened twice on that flight. The first time you kind of get taken a little, take it back a little bit. The second time you're like, all right, I didn't expect anything different. I was playing with the kid. I was holding the bottle because the kid thought it'd be funny to throw its bottle at me the entire flight long. So I'm just like, okay, I'll hold the bottle. I'm trying to do all I can. That's not the change we're talking about, all right? I'm not talking about diaper changes, and I'm not talking about time changes, right? Amen? Thank you for being here this morning. We're talking about a different kind of change. But there's a belief that you can avoid or you can resist change. But here's the thing. We know progress is coming. We know change is coming, and so we have to decide what kind of relationship are we going to have with it. You can make it an enemy, you can make it your friend, you can be mad, or you can kind of make a change. What are you going to do with change. Jesus is really trying to prepare people for this test. Mark 1 is told by all four gospel writers that Jesus said, calling his disciples, he says, hey, I'm going to make you fishers of men. I'm going to show you how to fish for people. Now, Mark, we know as John Mark, he has a close relationship with Peter, Simon Peter, who referred to John Mark in his epistles as a son. So they weren't literally father and son. It was this familial relationship. They were close, right? John Mark gets all his information from Peter, and that's how Mark writes his gospel. So he's getting firsthand eyewitness account of what Jesus was doing and what Peter heard. What we see is what Peter heard in verse 17 that says that Jesus said, come follow me, and I will teach you, I will show you how to fish for people. He may have said other things, but that's what Peter heard. Right? That's what's sealed in his mind. It's what he heard. It's a massive change. Put down your nets. It's all that Peter knew about. It's all that Andrew knew about, his brother. Put down your nets. Put down your career. Put down security. Put down your identity and come, put all of that aside and follow me. According to Mark 1, Jesus gave him no detailed explanation as to where this train was going. Like, he didn't give him any more. Just come follow me. I'm not going to tell you about all the things that we're going to go through together, all the things that you're going to see, what you're going to do, but just come and follow me. That's a massive change. It says, come and follow me, pull down your nets, and then let's go. James and John leave their dad and their business behind, immediately follow him. They go after him immediately. And we see that Jesus is giving them the first of many tests he was going to give them as leaders, which is this: what is your attitude towards change? Are you willing to change? He wasn't asking them if they loved change. He's like, are you responsive to change? Because people don't love change, but are you willing to change? Because when we fly up 10,000 feet at the historical narrative and into the book of Acts, you're going to see that Jesus is going to use these disciples to make massive, seismic, prolific, and painful changes. Painful to society, painful like on a national and cultural level, changes that are happening, and changes to themselves as individuals. Acts 10, Peter has this. All this has happened, right? All the book of Mark and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that's all happened. In Acts 10, Peter is going through such a painful change that right in the middle of that change, he would see a vision from God. He would see a vision from heaven and an audible voice from heaven instructing him to do something that he did not want to do so bad that he tells the audible voice no. You got to not want to do something real bad. If you hear an audible voice from heaven, you're like, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. That's how difficult it is to change. And this is Peter. He's walked with Jesus all throughout. He's seen all the things that we've seen in the Gospels through the death and resurrection and everything. And here Peter is in Acts 10, and we see change can be difficult. But in Mark 1, he says, put down your nets. This is the first test. Put down your nets, come and follow me, the first of many changes. And if you can't pass the put down your nets test, you're never going to be able to be used to the ends of the earth in Acts 1. In Mark 1, Jesus is saying, hey, put down your nets, come follow me. In Acts 1, he says, I'm going to use you. You'll be my witnesses to the ends of the earth. That's not going to happen if you don't put down your nets. And all the necessary changes that are coming down the pike aren't going to happen if you don't first answer that call to come follow me. Jesus didn't give them all the information. They couldn't handle that. Could you handle that? I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle all the information. I couldn't handle all the details of time. They couldn't handle all of that. But first, what he wanted to find out, are you the kind of person who will respond to change? This is what Dr. Richard Dobbins says about change. He says that most people won't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Most people won't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. That's human nature. It's human nature. It's what most people do. It's got to hurt so bad to stay here that I finally change because I can't take it anymore. The pain is so unbearable where I'm at that I have to change. I have to move on. I have to go. That's what most people think, but that's not how we should think. Is that wisdom? I'll tell you this, it's not leadership. God will use leaders who will proactively embrace change before they have to. Before it hits their pain threshold. They're actually anticipating and valuing and looking for change because the work that God does in them will ultimately be done through them. God, you will change me, Lord, and then you will use me as to be a change agent in the world around me. I think one of the things that keeps us from change and from sustaining change is really to understand the process of change. So here's what a realistic process of change looks like. I had a whiteboard out here. I was going to make a big drawing, but I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it on the big screen so you're going to see how good of an artist I actually am, okay? You ready for this? Normal. It's pretty good. That's how you're living your life right now, normal. And then something happens, something changes. We're gonna signify that by a plus or minus, right? Something is added, something is subtracted, something is given to you or taken away from you. The addition, maybe it was something given to you that you didn't want. Maybe you did want it. Even good things in your life require change. Even blessings in your life are change, and they can be stressful. You get a new promotion at work, you have more responsibility. You have new territory, it's change. It's also stress. You have a new member of the family, it's a blessing. It's wonderful, it's great, and it's stressful, right? You get more money, well, more money, more problems. Theologian Biggie Smalls, change is stressful. Subtraction. Something taken from you, it's also stressful. We feel this one. It's something that you need to let go of, maybe sometimes, that we're desperately holding on to, but we need to let go of. That can be stressful, right? But sometimes it has to be pried out of our hands. We have no desire to let that thing go. It has to be pride. It's something you didn't want to let go of, or something tragically changed in your life. You lost something, so something happens, addition or subtraction, good or bad, that causes the process of change to be introduced into your life. No longer are you just kind of living your normal life. There is a change situation that has happened, addition or subtraction. Now, the next phase after the change is something I'm going to call disorientation. Disorientation. Something's changed. Something is added or subtracted. It's good or it's bad, but it's new. And there's disorientation. And the reason it's called disorientation is because it's not clean or neat. It kind of looks like this, right? I told you, I will give art lessons after. I'm going up and down, and sometimes I'm going backwards, and sometimes I feel like I'm lost in the woods, and it's chaotic, and you think, I'm just going in circles here. It's kind of disorienting. It's chaotic, and there can be anything like changes you're making to your physical body or career, or it could be deeper than that, right? It could be emotional trauma or something that has been unearthed in your life. You've learned how to suppress it. You've learned how to push it down, to cope with it. And you push it down. But something now, an event in your life, an addition or subtraction in your life, something has brought it to the surface, and now you have to deal with it. And now I'm in this kind of state of disorientation. And here's the problem with this phase. The process of disorientation doesn't feel like growth. It doesn't feel anything like growth. It doesn't feel holy. It doesn't feel like discipleship. It doesn't feel like leadership development. It doesn't feel like anything good. It feels like I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just all over the place. It doesn't feel like I'm going up or down. I feel like I'm going backwards. I'm going sideways. I don't know what's happening. At best, it's confusing. At worst, it's excruciating. So what happens in the disorientation process is most people conclude, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And so what they do is they will look for an off-ramp. An off-ramp to try to get back to the way things used to be. Back to normal. And this could show up like something like this. Like I'm trying to change my health habits, and so I'm changing what I eat, and I'm changing how I work out, and it's getting tough, and I'm not feeling it anymore, and my body hurts, and I don't really enjoy it. And I worked out. I did everything they told me to do. I ate kale. I had a kale smoothie. You have to eat a kale smoothie. I don't know if you knew that. Like, no matter how fine it's blended, you still got to chew that thing up a little bit. It's bad. I did all of that, and I still gained a pound. Like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm going back. I'm quitting. I'm taking the off-ramp. I'm going back to what I used to do. Thank you, Taco Bell. Or let's say you start digging up some real stuff. Some serious pain that you've had maybe for decades, and you're going through all the muck and just sort of done with your normal, and something brought it out, and you're talking about it. Now you're dealing with it, and I'm not going anywhere. I feel like I'm going backwards. I'm going in circles. I'm not making any progress. I'm looking for that off-ramp. I'm looking for an off-ramp. The off-ramp provides a momentary relief. That's what it provides. But what it really is taking reality and pushing it down more. And you're pushing it down into denial. I'm denying, and I'm going to tell you, once you start to take the denial off-ramp, there's no end to how much denial you can do. Not only am I denying it's a problem, or I'm denying how much I'm hurting, but I'm denying how much I'm hurting other people. I'm in denial of all of it. So you push it down. But that doesn't work. It feels better, but it doesn't work. Because if you push those things down, they go subterranean on you, and they become volcanic. They will erupt at some point in time. They are coming out, and they come out in all kinds of ways. Addictions, depressions, all kinds of things. But we push it down because we don't like the disorientation. So we take the off-ramp. We're like, you know what? I can deal with it. I'm just going to deal with it. I'm just going to push it down. You pick the off-ramp, and you can try to live there. And here, I get it. Sometimes you got to take the off-ramp to catch your breath. Sometimes you got to take the off-ramp to catch your breath. But you got to understand, I got to get back in the disorientation. I got to get back into the mess. I got to get back into where I'm not sure where I'm going, because I got to get back there because there's something on the other side. What do you do with the disorientation? How do I get out of there? Because I can't spend the rest of my life just kind of not knowing where I'm going aimlessly. There's 3 things that you can do in the disorientation. They're not going to be magical. They're not going to be something that you're going to be like, oh, man, that's some new information. But it's something that I think that we need to be reminded of. You need to pray, you need to process, and you need to persevere. You need to pray, you need to process, you need to persevere. You pray. You process. By process, I mean you talk it out with wise, mature, godly people. You pray, God, give me strength to make it through and help me see what I can't see. You pray, you process, and then you persevere. Then after you have persevered, you pray again, and you process that again, and you persevere again. I have to process my prayer and my reality. I have to just keep going in the chaos. I know it doesn't feel like growth, but it's part of the process, so stay in there. And the more you do that, eventually you'll start getting revelation. God will start showing you things, and that revelation will lead you to this. Blow your mind, orientation. So I went from disorientation now to orientation. I'm starting to ask some really good questions, and I'm starting to get some really good answers. What do I believe? What did I believe? What's changed now? What do I believe now? Who am I? What am I called to do? Who am I called to be? What does God have? Like, God, what are you showing me right now? Let me lean into that a little bit. You're starting to ask some questions, and you're starting to get some answers. God is revealing some things to you. And through this process of revelation, you start to orient. And as you orient, you start to stabilize around things like this, like peace. You start to stabilize around things like peace. Now, I said peace. I didn't say bliss, right? This isn't Disney. This isn't then they lived happily ever after. This is peace. Like sometimes you come to peace with, I don't have all the answers. I've been asking some questions. I've released some emotion. I am wrestling with God. I told God what I really think. I've vented with him. I had a dark night, a sleepless night, maybe a painful night. But the sun came up. I got back into the disorientation. I'm starting to get some questions. And what happens is you start to come to peace. Well, sometimes maybe it's ambiguity. Sometimes it's grief and loss and reality. And you start to get now into this new normal where you get to things like peace. And you get to start stabilizing the words like peace or healing. Healing. Maybe it wasn't all just kind of restored to you all at once. Maybe your heart was healed in the process of things. That you're getting to a healthy place. And you start to stabilize with words like wisdom and maturity and strength. You start to develop strength because it's like a muscle. This whole process is like a muscle that you have to work out. James chapter 1 says this. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. This right here, this kind of orientation right here, this process of testing your faith. Because when I'm in the normal, I can't see the new normal. I can't see the peace and the healing and the wisdom and the maturity and the strength. I can't see it when I'm way over here. I've been in a spot where I was in the disorientation where I can't see what's up or down or left or right, and none of it felt worth it. I was like, you know what? No, I'm taking that off ramp. I'm going back to normal. It doesn't feel worth it. It's a testing of your faith. Faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I can't see it all when I'm living over here. I can't see it. But what gets me in here, the disorientation to orientation, what gets me from A to B? I got 3 options I can think of, and number 1 is not a great option, is give up altogether. That's an option. Right? Some people take that, they take the off-ramp, and they just like, you know what? I'm giving up. I'm done. I'm out. They take that option. Some people take the second option where they wait to go until the pain of staying is greater than the pain of changing. It's unbearable, so then I have to go. And they wait that long until I go there. Number 3 is an option to have faith, to believe that even though I can't see all of this at the end, all this new normal, I believe that there's something better for me than where I'm at right now. And so I'm going to go in there. And most of the time, the first time you do this, it's going to be painful. It's going to be disorienting. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But some people have the wisdom to go, you know what? I'm going to walk this out. I'm going to walk this process out because, God, I'm going to trust you that the peace, that the healing, that the wisdom, the maturity, the strength, the new normal, although it's not bliss, it's better than where I am. I'm going to trust you, God. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go through all this disorientation. I'm going to get some revelation. I'm going to ask some good questions. I'm going to get some answers. I'm going to reorient myself to get to this new kind of normal. The testing of your faith produces perseverance, but if you do this enough, what does it say? What does James say before that? If you do this enough, you will consider it joy. That verse doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the surface until you really unpack it. James says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because when you overcome them, the testing of your faith produces perseverance. We're like, yeah. We get the second half of that. How do I consider it joy? Well, you consider it joy because after you've done it a time or two, you realize it's better on the other side of this. So I'm going to consider it joy because there's going to be something great on the other side of this. You walk this process out. The revelations come to you. You start to see growth inside of you. Instead of being terrified of stepping into the disorientation, you're like, I'm going to step into this journey. I'm not sure what to expect, but God's faithfulness is showing up in your life. Strength is being produced in your life, and you start to consider it a joy. And you start to change, and you start to see change as an opportunity for growth. The process of change is a huge instrument that God uses in our lives for growth. You know what all of this is? All of this is a story. It's your story. And here's the truth. This is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time. It's not, I'm sorry to break it to you. It's not like the Boy Scout, Girl Scout thing. I got the badge, man. I did the change thing that one time. I'm done. James says the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And then he says something else. He says, let perseverance finish its work so that you will be mature and complete, not lacking anything. He says if you lack wisdom, you should ask God, right? You should pray, and you should process, and you should persevere. The testing of your faith produces perseverance, but you got to let perseverance finish its work so that you will be mature and you'll be complete and you won't lack anything. So when we think about the disciples in Mark chapter 1, when we look at this account where it's just these 4 verses where Jesus is calling his first 4 disciples, when he's inviting them into the training ground of change. And over the next few weeks, we're going to look into some of these other teachings that Jesus does, these other tests, and I'm going to show you how disoriented they're about to get. But what I'm going to tell you is you're going to see somebody, when you see somebody who's strong, that's somebody who has story after story, encounter after encounter, year over year, situation over situation of walking this journey, because process produces something. It produces strong, empathetic leaders. That's what Jesus was trying to create with his disciples. Strong, empathetic leaders. It's a muscle. You do this over and over again, you become strong and you become empathetic. Because you know how hard of a process this is. You know how hard it is. So all of a sudden, not only have you gained strength by doing it yourself, now you start to develop empathy for others, because you know when you see people in the middle of it, you know where they're about to go. You've been there before and you can have empathy for it. You do it over and over again, you become strong and empathetic leaders. And whether I've walked a mile in your shoes or not, when I see you in disorientation, I know how hard it is to stick around. I know how hard it is to come off the off-ramp back into the mess, to come out of the denial and back and have the truth come back up in your life. I know. So what does it create? It creates an empathy to think about things differently. Let's take the physical body through this process, and then we'll kind of take it deeper from a spiritual to emotional. Imagine you've neglected healthy changes in your body for so long that you've become unhealthy. That now something happens, right? A plus or minus event happens. Maybe something catastrophic event, like a heart attack or a diabetes diagnosis, right? And the doctor is telling you, dude, you got to get healthy. You got to change some habits. You got to eat better. You got to begin to exercise. And you kind of get this dose of reality. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to start exercising. And you go to the gym like, and I know because I've been there. Like you go to the gym after you haven't been working out for a while, and you're like, I can do this. And it's like 2 seconds in, you're like, nope. So begin exercising, and you get a dose of reality. You realize that I've neglected change in my body for so long that I literally cannot sit down and stand up without help. I can't walk on the treadmill for 60 seconds without having to sit down afterwards and rest. You get a dose of reality real quickly, and that reality crushes you. So what do? You fall into this kind of heap, this little mess right here. Like, I can't believe how bad this is. It's humiliating. It's embarrassing. It's overwhelming. You wake up the next day sore, and you're like, I didn't even do anything. I walked for 60 seconds on a 1-degree incline. How can I be sore? And you're hurting, and you're in the mess. You're in the chaos. All you feel is pain. You contemplate quitting. You contemplate taking the off-ramp and say, you know what? I'm done. I'm sick of this thing. I'm telling you, one day, if you stay with it, one day you'll be warming up with stuff you couldn't even do. But it's so hard at the beginning. So you got to show up, and you got to keep showing up, and you got to keep showing up. You got the test. You got to keep passing the test. Keep showing up. And hopefully, and what happens eventually is you can do the incline no problem. You can walk that no problem. Eventually, you don't have someone helping you. You can do it all by yourself. Eventually, you put weight on yourself. And now I can do this treadmill thing, not only carrying my own weight, but I can put some more weight on. And what happens? You got stronger, right? You got stronger. Now what happens? Somebody who went from being really unhealthy and totally discouraged in a heap fights their way through change, disorientation, orientation into a new normal. They keep doing it over and over and over again. They get strong. One day they look and they see somebody. They see somebody sitting down after the treadmill walk. They're there. And here's what you don't experience. Anybody who has that story, they don't go to the person who they see just struggle with that 1% incline for 60 seconds and now has to take a break. They don't go over to them and like, you know what? Just change already. Just do it. Like, just get up. What's wrong with you? They don't do that because they know how hard it was. So they take a knee next to that person and say, you know what? They throw an arm around that person and they bust their phone out. They start showing them before and after pictures. You check this out. This was me. I'm right where you are. I couldn't do that either. But look, this was me then. Now this is me now. I can do this. It's before and after pictures. It's strong, empathetic leaders. Now, everybody does not have the gift of leadership. Some people have the gift. There are born leaders. There are people that come out of the birth canal walking all like, I'm a leader. They got that gift. But not everybody has that gift. You may not even want to be a leader. You may not want any of that attention. But here's what I'm going to tell you. God has wired you with a deep desire for your life to positively affect at least one other person. You cannot go through life as a hermit, completely isolated and still fulfilled. It can't be done. It's not how God has wired you. You may not like the attention. You may not want tons of people, but there's at least one other person that God has given you a purpose to be an agent of change, both in yourself and at least in somebody else. In fact, one of our greatest fears as people is to go through this life that we would die having made no difference. It's a terrible thought. To think that if I died, nobody was affected. Didn't even matter. That's something God has put in you. He's hardwired you to do, to influence people. How do I do that? How do I allow God to take me through a process of change from normal to disorientation to orientation to new normal, peace, healing, wisdom, maturity, strength? How do I get out of the disorientation? I pray, I process, I persevere, I keep doing it. Eventually, you start recognizing people who are standing here, or people who are parked up on the off-ramp a little bit, and you start showing them before and after photos. I was there. I was right where you are right now. But hey, come with me. Come follow me. Like, I got something. I'm showing you. It can be done. Jesus had a huge plan for his disciples. He was going to turn them into strong, empathetic leaders. He was going to use them for seismic change beyond anything they could have ever imagined. And yet it all started in Mark chapter 1 with one change. Will you put down your net and follow me? Will you follow me when you don't know where this thing is going? You don't know where we're headed. It's a question of trust. It's a question of surrender. Surrender in our culture is a signal of defeat. But surrender in the kingdom of God is a signal of victory. Jesus was inviting these guys to lay it down, to lay their security, their identity, their vocation down because there was something better for them, but they had to trust him enough and surrender enough to say, you know what, I'm going to do that. Not in defeat. He wasn't inviting them in defeat, but he's inviting them into an opportunity to win. Will you follow me even when you don't know what the new normal is going to be? You say. Will you put down your net? Because if you can't put down your net in Mark 1, you can't do Acts 1, and you can't do Acts 10. You can't do all the stuff. All the good, that work that God has planned for you to do, which is way better than where you are right now. And how I think that applies to us. I can't tell you exactly how it's gonna pan out. I can't tell you exactly what's gonna happen, but because I don't know, and neither do you. Only God knows. But he does know. So you can wait until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, or you can give up hope, right? Those are options. But today I want to give you a third option I think is way better. Take a step of faith. Get off the off-ramp. Go back into the heat. Go back into the disorientation. Let God bring revelation in due time. Get to the new place that God is leading you to. For some of you today, you've been through this and you've had an opportunity to decide, will I do it again? Will I go back? Will I come back off the off-ramp into it? For some, it's to change our attitude about change. You just kind of been seen as a bad thing, and yet to actually realize that the greatest work both in you and through you is going to happen through this process, that God, there is something better that God has for you. But it's not always clear. We can't always see it. That's why faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For some of you, you're in the disorientation, and the voice in your head is telling you that this can't be good. I got to get out of here. That this isn't growth. That this isn't development. I'm not moving anywhere. But you're actually right in the middle of the process. So stay in. Keep processing. Keep praying. Keep persevering. And today, no matter how low you are, I pray that God will give you a wave of hope in this moment, that there's something better on the horizon than where you are right now. Just like Jesus invited these disciples to follow him in Mark 1, he's inviting you today to follow him. Maybe you've made a decision to follow him, or maybe you haven't yet. He's still inviting all of us to follow him. And if we follow him, he will teach us how to fish for people. It starts there, but it doesn't end there, because we know there's so much more that he's going to teach us. These 4 verses in Mark chapter 1 are powerful, because Jesus is saying, listen, everything's about to change. But in order for everything to change, I want to see how you're going to respond to it. Can we pass the change test? And the change test pass is simply saying, God, I trust you. I'm going to follow you. Let me pray with you today. Father, thank you for the invitation to follow you. The place of surrender that sometimes we need to find ourselves in. That sometimes we got to get over the idea that it's a defeatist position. That you're inviting us to kind of lay down our nets, to lay down our lives, to lay down those things that we find security in and identity in, and just everything there, is just to be able to follow you into this process of change. God, I pray that you will help us understand that there are things that we can't see that you have that are way better than the things that we're in right now. But to get there, we have to kind of go through some things. Not always. You're showing us things all the time, that you bless us and you're teaching us and you're guiding us. But God, I pray that we will all have an attitude to follow you with all of our heart. And so this morning, as we're praying here, if that's you for the first time, you're saying, God, I want to follow you. Jesus, I want to follow Jesus. Just in your own way, in your own prayer, just say, God, I trust you. I want to follow you. I believe in my heart that Jesus is the Son of God, and I'm going to follow him with my life. And God, for the rest of us who have made that decision, God, you keep calling us to follow you. It's not what happened that one time when moment. It's a constant following of where you're leading us. And God, I pray that you'll give us eyes to see, ears to hear, hearts to understand where you are leading us and guiding us, and to trust you through the process. Because God, you are worthy.